Hello, my name is David Pace. I work with Oakland Corporation. Today we're at the office of David Wallis, the Director of Engineering Safety, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, U.S. Department of Labor in Washington, D.C. We're here today with Lanny, Floyd, DuPont to discuss with David issues around electrical safety. David's office, among other things, is responsible for electrical safety standards. We're here to discuss several topics with him, to get his views and thoughts on different areas. To begin, we'll turn it over to Lanny to begin the process.
Maybe just to get started, let's talk a little bit about, if you would, about your role here in this office, a little bit about the organization and responsibilities of this section of OSHA.
I'm the director, like David said, I'm the director of the Office of Engineering Safety. I've been an employee here in the electrical standards writing office for over 30 years. I was recently promoted to being the director. My office is responsible for writing mechanical and electrical engineering safety standards. In the past, we've developed such standards as the installation safety requirements in Subpart S, which is patterned after Part 1 of NFPA 70E. This electrical safety related work practices in Subpart S, which is Part 2 of 70E. I was responsible, in fact I was the primary author for both of those standards. We also have electrical standards for electric power generation, transmission, and distribution, 1910-269. Standard for telecommunications, 1910-268. We also have mechanical and engineering safety standards like machine guarding, power presses, things of that nature.
Thanks. What are the current priorities? What are the priorities of the current administration in the area of electrical safety? Or let's just back up in overall objectives of OSHA right now. What are our objectives?
Our objectives, our regulatory plan and our regulatory agenda is published on our website. It's about 23 pages long if you print it out. We have the things on our priority list, so to speak, are the things in our regulatory plan. That would be standards for hexavalent chromium, occupational exposure to ethylene oxide, exposure to crystalline silica, respiratory protection, fire protection in shipyard employment, and the standards improvement process, the second phase of that. Currently there aren't any electrical standards that are on the priority list. However, there are currently two electrical standards on the regulatory agenda. The first one is a revision of the installation requirements in Subpart S. That would be the one that's comparable to Part 1 of the NFPA 70E. This second standard project is a long overdue revision of Subpart V of our construction standards. That's a standard for electric power transmission and distribution, the construction of electric power transmission and distribution lines and equipment. Both of those standards are scheduled for publications as proposed rules this year. Subpart S is due out in March. Subpart V is due out as a proposal in June.
You mentioned revision of Subpart S was primarily Part 1.
That's correct.
Do you have...
if you look at the current regulatory agenda, like I said, it's available on our website. If you look at the Subpart S project, you'll see that the revision of our installation requirements is only the first phase of that project, that we are currently expecting to address the other parts of 70E, certainly Part 2, which is safety-related work practices, and also maintenance and special equipment, and later rulemaking efforts. Currently, the thinking is that we will look at doing safety-related work practices, maintenance, and special equipment. However, the agency's also considering whether we would like to do general industry and construction together as one standard or to do them separately. So that's one of the things we would have to work out along the way.
Okay.
David, what are your most pressing concerns in your area, in the area of electrical safety?
There are probably several things. One thing the agency is looking into, in particular in the subpart V rulemaking, is the protection of employees from electric arcs. There's in NFPA 70E, there's a section on protecting employees from electric flash hazards, and we are the first opportunity the agency will have to require a type of protection that's comparable to 70E would be in the subpart V rulemaking. We don't expect, in fact our current draft proposal, the publicly available one, doesn't have provisions that look exactly like 70E, but they are taking from 70E the concept of protecting employees from arcs. The current standard, as you probably know, only prohibits clothing that could make injuries worse, and we are an agency that requires protection from hazards. So we thought the next logical step would be to protect employees from those arcs and not just keep it from getting worse.
Yeah. And looking at the demographics of the workforce, what do you see that are changes that are of particular concern for your areas of responsibility? Things such as age. There seem to be more young people in the workforce, more older people in the workforce. There seem to be more temporary and part-time. There's more outsourcing and more contracting work being done. How does this play out in your work?
In my work, I mean, it's quite clear to me. One of the things I see in reviewing accidents is that many of the accidents occur to the younger workers. They're less experienced. They probably they haven't been in the job as long. Maybe their training didn't take as well. Anyway, for whatever reason, the younger workers seem to be predominantly more involved in injuries. Electrical injuries in particular. Obviously training is one of the important things to help correct that issue. The other area we've been looking at lately is the issue of contractor safety. Again, in the subpart V rulemaking, we've looked at the accident data for contractors and for utilities. These are groups of employees and employers that are doing the same kinds of work. They're working on electric power generation, transmission, and distribution installations. And we found, in looking at the data, that contractor fatality rates are double the fatality rate for electric utilities. So to address that issue, to try to bring the contractor rates down, we've drafted some language that in our upcoming proposal that would require the host employer, basically the utility, and the contractors to work together a little more, to communicate a little better, to try to address that safety problem and try to get contractors down to a better level of providing protection for their employees.
Mm-hmm. Going back to your plans of revising and updating subpart S of 1910. What is would you describe the relationship that 70E will have in the ongoing revision and rewrite of the electrical standards?
As you know, 70E forms the basis of both parts 1 and part 2, the installation requirements and the safety-related work practices for existing subpart S. We see that relationship continuing. Right now, the part 1, our installation requirements look, I wouldn't say identical, but very, very close to the language that was in 70E at the time that standard was adopted. I see something, maybe not quite that one-to-one relationship, but it should still be very close. You should be able to see when you read the OSHA standard that it came from 70E. As we move forward into parts 2 and parts 3, I mean, I don't want to predict, but my guess is, again, we'll see maybe a little deviation, but you'll be able to see a clear genesis that this is where Subpart S came from, that it came from 70E, and you'll be able to recognize that when you read it.
Do you see that language will be actually inserted into the OSHA regulations, or will there be more of a reference to 70E?
The current way we're doing it is the way we're likely to do it in the future, and that's we've taken the 70E language and put language that's, you know, comparable to that language right in the federal regulations. It is possible to incorporate other standards by reference, national consensus standards by reference, but it's very awkward for the agency to do it for legal reasons and for practical reasons, and generally the overall consensus of the regulated community and the internal regulating community is that it's better wherever possible to put the federal regulations in as OSHA standards, so that you're not forcing people to look at a second book or whatever.
Somewhat related to that is I mean, your job is to write the standards, but then helping the compliance resources within OSHA to be able to utilize that standard and other standards in their field work. Can you talk about how compliance officers are now trained, and maybe elaborate maybe how that may change in the future?
Sure. Our COSHOs, that's what we call our compliance officers. COSHO stands for Compliance Safety and Health Officer. Our COSHOs are currently trained at our training institute. We have a training institute that offers courses in all of our standards. Electrical is one of them. We offer a variety of electrical courses. We offer courses in particular on the installation requirements in Subpart S. We offer another course on work practices. I believe there's separate courses. I know there's 2 electrical courses. Those 2 electrical courses. Plus there's another course they offer on less regular but periodic basis. They offer a course on 1910-269. The first 2 electrical courses tend to be very popular. We're very fortunate in that we have one of the, in my opinion, one of the best electrical instructors in the country, John Griswold's, teaching our electrical standards. The electrical standards course is focused, of course, on the OSHA standards, but John is very knowledgeable in the code, and he brings that to the class. He's knowledgeable in 70E, he also brings that to the class. So he's bringing that background of codes work to the classes. I see that continuing into the future. I think that especially when some of the issues that are coming up, protection from electric arcs, the agency is looking through agreements with, I'm sure you're familiar with the one agreement in Columbus between OSHA and the contractors. We're looking at things like that, so that we're looking to 70E to provide supplemental protection in the areas of flash protection. So we are continuing to evolve our electrical classes to bring those concepts into the classes.
And when you go through that training, and more importantly, when the compliance officers are in the field, the additional requirements in 70E that don't exist today, at least in Subpart S, you mentioned they receive training on those. If those issues come up in the field, is that an enforceable issue through OSHA? And I know that it's not exactly clear, but
we have in the past, I don't want to say we've enforced 70E, because that would be inaccurate. We can't cite an employer for not following 70E, but we can cite an employer for 2 things. The one thing is we can cite them for violating our existing requirements. We have our general PPE requirement in 1910-132 requires basically the employer to provide personal protective equipment where it's necessary for protecting employees. And the second area is in 1910-335, we have a general requirement for the employer to provide protection from electric arc and shock hazards. And those are very general requirements. So in order to enforce those requirements, generally we have to show that it's industry practice to provide certain types of protection, or the extent to which protection should be provided. In that case, we can look to 70E. We've done that in the past. I believe it was Ford Motor Company was cited, and we had signed a settlement agreement with them, and they've agreed to follow 70E in adopting and addressing some of these issues that really aren't spelled out in black and white in the OSHA standard. I mean, that it certainly seems to me that if I'm an employer and I want to comply with a general requirement for protecting my employees from electric shock and electric arc, that the first place I'm going to look is 70E in that workplace.
Many times you hear the term general duty clause. Would that have any application?
That would be the second area.
Yeah.
To the extent that OSHA standards do not address a particular hazard, but we can show that it's a recognized hazard, either in an employer's industry or in an employer's particular workplace, we can also cite the general duty clause. I'm not aware of any cases where we've done that for electric arc protection, or actually in electrical areas in general, but we certainly could.
Yeah.
With respect to electric arc, I think probably the existing requirements in 1910, 132, and 335 would probably be good enough. That would be the avenue our compliance officers would look to.
Okay. Our audience is highly motivated and focused on improving electrical safety. If you could identify one thing that community could focus on or improve that would impact electrical safety, what would that be?
That, for me, that's a very easy question. Like I've said, I've been working for OSHA for 30 years, and the one thing I've seen that year in and year out is a huge electrical killer is contact with overhead power lines. Ladders, cranes, derricks, garbage trucks, you name it. If it can go up in the air,
TV antennas.
The TV antennas is right. If it can go up in the air, certainly it has gone up in the air and is to kill employees. So if I could pick one area where safety could be improved, that would be it. Over my 30 years in OSHA, I don't think I've seen certainly not the percentage of accidents go down in those cases, and I doubt that the numbers have gone down tremendously either.
You've participated in our electrical safety workshop several times in the past. What do you see as the value of this type of forum?
I think this is an excellent forum to deliver the electrical safety message, to bring out the one benefit I get from it when I go is that it brings up issues that brings me current with technology and with issues that maybe I wasn't aware of or didn't realize it was as significant a problem as it was. I think it's basically brings state of the art message to electrical safety.
From that, could you help us identify something we should maybe focus on in the future as far as a focal point of that workshop? Maybe you've already identified that in the previous question.
I think so. Like I said, if there's one area that the community could address, that would be it.
Well, even beyond that, beyond the topics chosen, I mean, are there any other ideas that you may have that or outreach methods? Or,
there is one other area is to I know that issuing standards through through OSHA is a long process, and people get very frustrated waiting for OSHA standards to come out. And maybe one other thing is for the members and for the people leading the workshop I mean, don't get discouraged that it takes OSHA 10 years to put out a standard. What that means is you can't give up. You have to keep pushing to keep
keep OSHA moving towards improving electrical safety. A lot of times things here don't move without a little external encouragement. So I want to keep everybody on that same. That OSHA standards are minimum standards. They're in the past one way to set safety standards, especially if you. This is not true of the 70E committee, but it is true of some of the other committees I sit on. That one way to set safety standards is to poll the membership and whatever everybody complies with. That's the minimum, and that ends up being the requirement. I don't think that's true in the 70E committee. I think that committee does go a step beyond, look to see what protection is necessary and reasonable. So I would encourage everybody in the electrical safety community to compliance with OSHA is just the bottom line. You need to if you want to save lives, if you want to prevent injuries to your employees, you need to go beyond that and look to see where are areas I can improve safety.
So relationships that OSHA has established in the past, and I indicated that may be doing more of that. Can you comment on that?
Yes, this administration in particular, although I think the one I mentioned before started with the last administration, this administration is a strong supporter of partnerships and alliances with industry. We have alliances. Our local area office in Columbus has an agreement with the National Electrical Contractors Association, their chapter out there, to that their chapter members will follow 70E, and as long as they do, OSHA will support them. If they don't follow it, they're looking for a citation. They're looking at getting a citation. And in turn, the contractors have agreed to go out and sell the 70E message to their membership and to get, promote compliance with 70E. OSHA currently also has, it's like almost weekly, I see a message in my email inbox, some additional alliance. I saw one for the printing industry yesterday. We have one with the tree care industry. We have one almost every industry, you name it, we have an alliance with them. We're partnering with industry to get the safety message out to their membership and to the employees.
If we look at partnerships around just specifically electrical safety, do you know of efforts to form more partnerships, or maybe
there is at least one more that I'm familiar with. There's it involves I believe NECA and the utilities and IBW jointly are looking for an alliance with OSHA, and we're looking at some issues there.
David, our last question may be a bit personal, but I'd like for you to think about what are you most proud of in your 30-year career in OSHA?
One of the things that makes this job very rewarding, as we said, the standards writing process, it takes a long time to get an OSHA standard out. 5 years, 10 years is not unusual in some cases. One of the things that makes standards writing very rewarding is the knowledge that the standard that you write, that you issue and you make employers comply with, protects lives, protects employees, and saves lives. One of the things we did when we were working on Subpart S, the electrical installation requirements, the revision of that standard, is we looked back to see what effect one of my old standards had. One of the first standards I worked on was requirement for ground fault circuit interrupters for construction sites.
In the preamble to that final rule, we estimated that there were between 30 and 45 deaths per year caused by 120 volt ground fault hazards on construction sites. And we determined that most of those, nearly all those deaths were preventable. We took another look over the period of 1990 to 1996, and we found that there were only 46 deaths involving 120 volt ground faults and temporary wiring over that period. And so it's clear that that rule has saved quite a number of lives, total between 600 and 975 lives over that period. And so that's what I'm proud of.
Thank you, David.
David, you mentioned earlier your view that most employers had improved the process, and I believe I'm right in saying that your view was that most employers were making a better effort at making improvements, complying, and generally making conditions better for employees. From the employer or the industry side, what I've seen, I don't remember how long I've known you, but I've seen during that time your hard work in trying to get these things done. I know it's my opinion at least that it's probably a frustrating, can be frustrating at times, trying to get the rules made, the things done, the things changed, trying to work within the system. And on behalf of, I think I speak for most people in the electrical community, we would like to thank you for your efforts. It has been a significant contribution over the years, and we thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Again, David, I want to thank you for the time you're spending with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us the time.
Thank you.